by each other. And our first speaker we have is no doubt going to offer a lot of inspiration and a lot of wisdom with us today. Muazma is a principal engineering manager at Microsoft Azure with over 13 years of experience. Currently, she's an active researcher in biomedical engineering, and like her research is being used in EKGs across the world. I found that phenomenal. She's also on our leadership team here at Women Who Code, helps us put on events, and a part of a lot of great other diversity organization is one of the things that she's a really large advocate for. And I am thrilled to open up the floor for her. So she's going to tee up a little bit of sharing her background and experience with you all so that, you can ask questions about that background. We shared a little bit in our teaser, some other additional questions, big data, cloud computing, AI technologies, leadership, right? All things are on the table. But first, I will hand it over to Muazma to share her awesome story.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ree, for the kind introduction. I hope you can see my screen and you can hear me well. I'm watching the chat also. I know Ree will be helping me here to answer any questions, anything that you feel like you need to know more about. So as she told a little bit about my introduction, I would like to share kind of my journey with all of you as a starting point, and then happy to answer any questions that you want to ask more about me, my journey, anything tech related, anything leadership related, anything you basically have any questions for. I'm more than happy to answer that. So I've been in the tech industry for over 13 years, which is a really long time for a woman in tech. Some of you might be starting off, would be mid-career, would be senior woman. I think coming from Pakistan, where women make 14% of the tech industry right now, this number was nearly as much when I was graduating from college back in 2006. It seems like a long time ago. Fun fact about me, I'm a mother of 3 girls, including twins, and they are a handful. They're toddlers right now, so it's a lot of work. So happy to answer all that questions as well. If anybody has any questions about life integrations or anything like that. I am very passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. The reason is, as I mentioned, when I was graduating back in 2006 and I had to publish my research paper, I looked around and tried to find any role models or try to find anyone who can literally just help me doing that. I wrote an email to probably 250 plus people. I just found on different websites and just randomly sent that email to like around 250 people. And I'll ask in the chat, just tell me, do you think how many people replied back when I asked them about how do I publish my research paper? So just take a guess in the chat how many people replied back. So that really is the reason why I do a lot of this work, because I am really keen to be a role model for the women or girls or anyone per se that really want to pursue whatever they feel like they want to do in life, right? I really take mentorship, I really take sponsorship, allyship really seriously. I try to do a lot of that in several forums like this one, so Women Who Code Cloud Track. I also lead a Seattle community for Native.org, and also have been a mentor for many remote girls in like remote areas of Pakistan, in Kenya, and in a few other areas as well. And some of these mentees that I've like mentored over the years are now my friends, or their relationship has really evolved into something else. And I'm really proud of that. Some of the pictures on the left-hand side of the screen, the very first one on the top is the very first time I did a public speaking in front of 200 plus people. It was back in Rawalpindi in Pakistan, where I'm from, where my university is actually. And this was for my research paper. And I was one of the 2 women in the whole crowd. So out of 200 plus people, This was my first time doing a talk, and this is a good reminder for me to look at like how far I've come. And then there are some other pictures of some other things that I've done. There's my family. There's also a picture of me and my father. So I recently published a Medium blog about the journey of my father. It's just incredible, the kind of support he has given me and everyone around him as well. And I think the building chatbots one is from a Women Who Code Cloud event, which was last year, that happened in person in San Francisco. So that's me. That's like a little bit more about me, information about all of that, and happy to kind of dig deep into that as I answer more questions. More around my journey, this is like kind of time travel, starting from when I graduated from college. I can go back into before that time as well, but then that would be like old age. So really, from 2006 to 2010, I worked in Pakistan in a company with Teradata. It's a global company based in United States. I was in their EMEA region, so that involved a lot of traveling to Europe. So another fun fact about me that I've lived and worked in 5 different countries and 3 different continents. So really familiar with a lot of different customs and some interesting things. So some interesting stories to share there as well. Then I moved to United States. I got married and moved to United States. And when I moved to United States, it was 2010 time frame, just after the recession. So there was literally no one who was hiring or at least sponsoring visas. So there's that sad smiley over there. But the reason to put that over there was really some self-doubt kicked in. And there was a lot of reestablishing, because I knew that I can do the work, but it was really, really hard to actually find anybody who's willing to actually give me the chance. So there's a bunch of stories there to share as well. I'm happy to again answer those questions. Then eventually somebody took a chance on me, which was a contract to hire job in T-Mobile. And I started as a contractor over there, and it was paying 1/3 of what the market was at that time, and I knew based on my skills as well. But I just started that to get my foot into the door. And at the time when I was about to get a full-time offer, T-Mobile and AT&T merger, which was happening at that time, didn't go through. So they actually let go of, I think, 10,000 plus people. And that's a story again in itself, that the day I went to office, they were literally checking your badges and saying you should go home or you should go inside. So I knew at that moment that they would let go of me, right? Because I was a contractor, and there was this visa fees and all of those things, right? So but that didn't happen. The person looked at my my badge and said, you can go inside. And I was shocked. I was like, okay, I can go inside. He said, yeah, you can go inside. So that was another kind of fun story I wanted to just quickly share. But eventually what happened was, like, I became a full-time employee over there. I also worked at a startup called Julep here, based here in Seattle. I have worked in Nordstrom, and then for past almost 3 years, I have been in Microsoft. So my career throughout has been in the data domain. I have done big data around 2011-12, really switched towards big data, originally in the relational database space. And then in the big data space, moving towards AI, ML, and all of the things that make a good data story, right? And then have been in this industries throughout. So happy to answer any questions. And then starting from, I would say, 2015 onwards, started to focus on cloud computing with the context of data and AI. So my focus has been delivering the data pipelines of like petabyte scale. How do you monitor them? What do you do with them? What are the best practices and things like that? And starting this year has been a fun year. You all know that. Starting this year, I was offered a manager role in my current team that I was leading as a technical lead for a while. And I took that. That was, I think, a good move for me. And recently got promoted to principal as well within Microsoft. So that has been my journey. Definitely this chart doesn't tell all the ups and downs that were there. In between, I definitely had my 3 kids and a bunch of other things that happened as well. So again, happy to answer any questions, be it tech related, be it imposter syndrome, be it work-life integration, be it anything that you want to know more about. Last slide I have actually is this that I share usually in some of my talks. This is just an oversimplified version of the 5 things that I think matter the most. Then it's the kind of advice that I wished I had when I was starting my career. The number one thing is just like kind of popping the bubble right there. There's no such thing as work-life balance. So there's always integration. It's really, really important for all of us to understand that. If you're a manager or lead in a team, you need to understand what the other person is going through. Having that empathy is really important. And everybody has something going on. They could be single right now in current situation and going through that alone, or they could have homeschooling, a bunch of other responsibilities, or they could have a sick relative somewhere nearby, or they themselves might be sick or something like that, right? So there's always something or the other that's always happening around you. So it's really, really important to understand that there is this work aspect, there is this life aspect of everybody, and how do you integrate them together? And it's never a balance. There are days that life will take over, there are days that work will take over. So how do you maintain that integration? How do you do well? It's an art. It's an art, and it's a challenge every single day that most of us go through. So that's the first thing. Second, build your network. I cannot emphasize enough on that. I think a lot of introverts like myself have hard time reaching out to folks, understanding how can they help me, how can I build my mentors, how can I build my allies, how can I build my sponsors. It's really, really important to invest in time in other people. Some of them would grow organically, will be part of your network wherever you go, be part of these communities or anywhere else. But some of us have to do that extra mile, that work to actually build your network. And do not build your network just because you need a job. And when you need a job, you reach out to them, be proactive about it, keep those networks like that connection warm, set up virtual coffees, set up virtual lunches, set up those things with those folks so you can stay in touch. Third one, which is really, really important for us, especially women, is to be kind and to be kind to yourself, right? It's really, really important that you forgive yourself when you have done a mistake. And in some cases, if you don't think that you are enough, or you've not done enough, or whatever is your imposter, or whatever is that sound in your head that tells you that this is not right or whatever, just be kind to yourself and forgive yourself and move on, right? We are very tolerable, like we tolerate almost everything around us, but what we don't do is to be kind enough to ourselves. That would be my advice, and the thing that I've learned. And it's a hard thing for me to do also from cultural perspective as well. Come from a culture where women say yes to almost everything that they hear around them. You have to be the nice one in the room. You have to abide by everything that you hear. So it's really, really hard to have your own voice. So in all those situations where you feel you're trapped, where you're feeling that you're not doing enough, where something is not right, just be kind to yourself. That's the first thing you should tell yourself. The last 2 things that I would just share is ask for what you want. This is a hard one again for women. And again, a lot of my mentees, a lot of people that I talk to, especially early career, mid-career women, is they expect that somebody would come in and say, oh, you're ready for the promotion, I'll give you that. Or they would expect somebody would come in and say, this is the great project, this is the most visible project, or whatever like your goals are in your career, and they would just hand it over to you. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And you'll see there are male counterparts, or like people who have that courage to actually go and ask for things, get those things. And that's how the world works. So it's really hard for some of us to understand that, and some of us to really do it. But just think about it, that what's the worst that would happen? What's the worst that can happen if you ask for something? So my advice would be to go for it. Ask for what you want. Ask for that next promotion. Ask for that thing that you really are looking for. What are your goals? Of course, make sense about it, that you've really done the work towards it, but nobody here is a mind reader. So that would be the 4th thing. And the last one, it's really, really, really something that I believe in, is to help others along the way. There are people who have those fancy titles that you might think are like great and you want to be like them, but nobody likes to work with them. Those are not the folks that I think I would not like to have them in my team. I would not like to have work with them anyways. But the people that you build or over the time is kind of linked to the other things here as well, is the build your network piece and other things. Is as you look back, the folks that stay with you in your network are the ones either they helped you or you help them some way or the other. Be it a session like this, be it like some of the fresh graduates sometimes ask me like, how can I be a mentor, right? Everyone can help somebody else because you have something that somebody else doesn't have. You might be good at something that somebody else doesn't have. So find those little ways how you can help others and build upon that. That's the one thing. If you just take one thing away from today's session, is that is to build upon those relationships, build upon helping and growing others, and in return you'll find a lot of meaning as well. You'll find good meaning in what the work that you're doing as well. So that would be my thing. Lastly, this is a slide from one of my mentors. She's awesome, and she talks about this thing. We say that be fearless, but that's not true. We are all afraid of something. So it's the courage that you need in those times to actually take that step. So be it a switch in roles, be it asking for something that you want, be it a new course that you want to learn about, be it new technology that you want to do, be it changing disciplines, changing countries, changing jobs, changing relationships, whatever it is, right? It's those times that you need that little courage, little push. Sometimes it comes from within, sometimes you need somebody for that. So it could be your mentor, your coach, your buddy, your friend that can give you that courage and can be your back over there. So take that little courage and take that step. So that's all. I would just shut up from now on and ask away your questions. And looking at the chat, seems like some folks had some numbers here. So somebody said 50, 2, 3, 1. So it's close. So actually 7 people responded back out of the 250 that I sent email. And those 7 folks, I'm still in touch with them. And yeah, it was amazing for those 7 even to respond. I wasn't expecting that. And though out of those 7, 4 of those actually helped me through the process. I actually was able to publish my paper. I was able to go in a conference, present that, was able to win several awards, and eventually it went into as a product, which is used in EKG machines right now. So you never know who is going to respond when you ask for help. So that's the other piece as well. So yeah, go away, ask your questions. What do you want to know more about? These are some 4 things that I thought would be good to start with, but anything is at the table.
I like how I was overly optimistic with my 50. While folks are putting questions in the Q&A, one that came to mind when you were sharing your story that might be really similar for folks right now, given 2020, the pandemic, is that lull between when you came to the United States and were able to successfully find a job. Do you have any tips or things that you did in order to make your resume stand out, in order to stay fresh? Was there anything that you did during that time?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I did almost everything. So I'll tell you, like there were good times, there were bad times, there were several ups and downs during that time, right? So I knew I was qualified. I knew I could do the work. I was like my gold medalist from my university. I had research published. I had everything on my resume. So resume was really, really good, and I knew that I can do the work. There were a few places, and I will not name those companies here, that I did interviews also. But during the process, I came to know that they're not doing sponsorship, so they can't hire me. And they said that, okay, we'll keep your resume up and we'll call you once it opens up, right? So of course you feel like, why this is happening to you. Some of the students right now might be going through that due to visa issues and things like that. That's a common thing. And sometimes like I didn't do well in interviews, right? So there's like, and between then and now, the interview process has like gone incredibly hard, right? So one key thing I would just share over there is like, this is a thing people say, it's very cliche, but I would still say that is, don't give up. I remember a particular date. It was on November 24th, just before Thanksgiving. I was at a point that I told my husband that I'm not going to interview another place. I'm done. And it was already 5 months into this, doing this every other week, going through interviews and applying it wherever I could find. And I said to him that I'm not doing it. And I literally was at a point that I said, I'm not going to do that. And he said this one thing, that if you wouldn't do, nobody else is going to come and help you. So it's up to you. I mean, you decide, but you have to decide it for yourself. So don't depend on me to say yes or no. This is your decision. And I said, okay, I'll sleep on it. And the morning I woke up following day, I had an email from a person who was saying that there's a contract option. Do you want to go ahead and interview? And that's the one that actually converted into a role. So I explicitly remember that day because I was almost at a point of giving up. And when I woke up, even before looking at the email, I had made mind and I'll continue, I'll do it. It was just a sign for me, oh yeah, there's some hope. So when you are in those darkest time, when you are getting rejections, things like that, sometimes you need somebody to just give you that last push. So look for that. In terms of resume and things like that, again, I can keep talking. There are several things you can do. Again, find a mentor in your industry who can help you literally through the process. Sometimes if you know somebody in the company you're applying, definitely work with them, understand what their interview processes are. Right now on Medium, in so many places, if you just search, like, you'll find so many articles. But sometimes it's those little things that matter. Somebody who's doing a referral for you, somebody who can just connect you with a hiring manager, somebody who can do that connection for you. So again, coming back to your build your network piece, it's important that you invest on it, and invest not because when you need the job, but invest over time. So you have those folks to turn to.
That's awesome. That's great stuff. And it's, I think, encouraging, when you hear about engineers that you respect and are incredibly decorated, it gives you like, okay, it's, we're not alone in this journey or struggle. Are there any questions folks want to pop in and ask? I know I have a ton, but again, not going to be selfish in today's session and asking all of my questions. Feel free to drop them in the chat or in the Q&A section. Sophia asks, how did you get a job at Microsoft? Was it through networking?
Yeah, so it was a combination of two things. So there was somebody who reached out to me. There was a recruiter reached out to me on LinkedIn. I recently posted an article and they reached out based on that. And then once I applied to that role, I knew somebody in Microsoft who was able to refer me directly to the role as well. So it was a combination of two things. I came to know about the role through a recruiter who reached out to me. And then I got a referral internally in Microsoft. So it was a combination of both things. So it's kind of related to your social media presence also, like what's your brand online. If I search for you today on LinkedIn, what I'm going to find about you, that's really, really important right now in this age. So those things would be important. Yeah.
That's awesome. Kel B asks, how can we transition into cloud computing from other areas of tech? Any skills that we need to focus on?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. I'll share the story that how I started. And again, everybody has their own journeys. So I mentioned like briefly that I switched to a startup for a while. And again, the reason to switch for me was to try something new. There's another philosophy that I have. Some of you might not agree that, but if you're too comfortable in doing what you're doing, there's something you're missing out on. So if you're too comfortable in your role, that means that you're not gaining enough, you're not learning enough. So that uncomfortableness that you get from learning something new is something that I look for. That's why I've always switched roles every 3-4 years or so. Again, some folks might not agree to that philosophy. So it's just my personal opinion. So I'll tell you, like, I switched to a startup at that point. There was a lead data architect role that they were offering me. And it was a great startup. It was doing really well as well here in Seattle, and I joined them. And when I joined the first day, I go to the office and then meet different folks. I think towards the end of the day, the manager comes over and says that this is this AWS thing. Could you go figure it out? And we need this data in like in a week's time, or a few days actually. And we have this this call with our investors where we have to present this thing called lifetime value of our customer, and all of the data was there in a S3 bucket. So I was like, okay. Up till that point, I had never touched cloud, so I had no idea about cloud. So I was like, okay, but I had like a lot of big data experience, had a lot of relational data experience, on-premise experience, but I had no idea about cloud. So that was my first day at job, and I was scared. So in the next, I would say, for 72 hours, I took almost every possible training that I could to understand how do I take a data set, how do I do whatever I want to get to be done with that data set, how do I move to Redshift, how do I do some data manipulations on it, how do I build some reporting on it. Of course, I knew the tooling, but nothing inside of cloud. So that's how I started my cloud journey. Your question about any skills that you need to focus on, I think most of your skills which are applicable to the on-premise environment are applicable to the cloud environment as well. What it brings is the agility. So the things that you can scale up, scale down. How do you plan for disaster recovery, high availability, things like that? How do you monitor your solutions in cloud? They're a little bit different than how would you do in your on-premise environment. So things like that kind of vary. But let's say if you're a software engineer, front and back end, whatever, or anything that you have over there, if you just switch it to cloud, it's not a very drastically different experience. What you need to understand is the different types of services, how those services work, be it an IaaS solution, PaaS solution, serverless, things like that. Like those details you need to understand. And there are a lot of great courses out there. A lot of these cloud providers have great certifications also that you can take. I know our cloud community has this AWS sessions that they're doing. If you want to hop along with that, I think you learn from each other's experience there as well. So it would be good starting point for you.
That's great. It's kind of like when you're learning a new language, you are kind of just learning the syntax and not, starting from scratch, because the fundamentals. And I really like the example of just having already the knowledge and the project that was running and having to deploy that to the cloud, and make you jump into the deep end and learn how to swim. That's awesome. So Pradnya asked, for someone new to cloud, machine learning, and AI, what path would you suggest?
So I think all of these three areas and a combination of them is very relevant to the current job market and the future one. So there's this study that says that there will be I'm forgetting the exact numbers, a few million jobs in this area in the next 2 years, right? COVID might have changed a few numbers there, but most of them are data related, because every org in future it needs data scientists, data engineers, the business analysts, data analysts. And then of course they need these things off of their on-premise environments where they can't support these data centers, right? So cloud is kind of the future in that sense. Again, there are different philosophies around it, multi-cloud environment, or just signing off with one vendor and things like that. Your question about your path, I would suggest there are two things. This is something that has worked for me, is to ask yourself, what are you good at? What are your weaknesses? What are your opportunities? So I do this thing called a SWOT analysis. How do you do for products? So what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your threats? What are your opportunities? And I do it for myself every few months to understand where I am technically, what I do well, what I don't do well, what are the areas I need to do better. So I would start with that to understand where you stand. If all of these areas are like brand new for you, and you don't have, let's say, any experience or any background that kind of relates to it, I would ask you to ask yourself what excites you the most. Because in each of these areas, there is a bunch of things that you can do. Just in the AI space, you can do a lot of work, right? You can go completely in the vision detection side. You can go in like autonomous driving side. You can go anywhere as you want. So think about either a domain or somewhere that you want to go deep into, especially if you're starting your career. As you grow in your career, you can become a more generalist, which is okay. But when you are starting your career, it's good to have a niche, because that's what your resume should shine on. So I would say that start with something that you're passionate about. Take a certain type of model that you think you are good at or you can understand well and can make sense of it, and apply it to a real business problem and see where that matches your end goal. If you're taking online courses or anything like that, again, focus on hands-on learning type projects where you have capstone projects where you can actually learn this by really doing something. And the good thing is that you can put it on your GitHub and then can add it on your resume as well. So those would be a few things that I would suggest to start with. Cloud can become a byproduct of some of these things if you focus on, let's say, ML and AI kind of workload, and then where do you deploy it? That could be cloud, right? So that's an add-on that you can add. You can completely, again, I'm giving you all the options because I can't decide it on your, because I don't know a bunch about you. So other things you can think about is taking the path of, let's say, a certification, right? So again, AWS has great certifications, Azure has one, Google has a few as well that you can take if that's the route you want to take. But I would highly recommend to find your niche, find what excites you, try a few projects, take something open source, some data set, do something with it, and see if it excites you, if that's the area you want to focus more on.
I love it. So many good nuggets in there. Another question we have, where do you think big data is heading? Are data warehouses still relevant, or are companies moving toward dumping data into a data lake and working with raw data more?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So I'll tell you, this is something related to when Brie and I were chatting before, like some of the topics to talk about. So in the industry, if you have lived long enough to see how the industry moves, so there's just one thing, every 3 to 5 years, there's a major shift. So even in the same domain, if let's say if I've been in the data domain for my first day at my job till now as well, and I can say for sure that within this last 13 plus years, the domain has changed at least 3 times. The first time I started with relational databases completely there. The entire BI was reporting, everything was within relational databases. Then the big data came in, the Hadoop, the Spark, and all the fun stuff over there, pigs, and like all of the animals that you can think about, right? Then we started moving to cloud, and then the cloud AI ML, although AI ML was actually before, so it's a concept from 1980s, right? But nobody was calling them these things. My degree project or the research is actually predictive model, right? Which is using your ECG signals to predict if you will get a heart attack or not. But I never knew that I was a machine learning engineer, and I never called myself that because it was not cool back then. It was not the buzzword back then. So that era is right now. That's where we're living right now. And Gartner does this study every year, and they publish the link. I'll try to find it, maybe post it later as resources that shows what is the hype of AI right now and where it is going, and what are the things that have already passed through. For example, autonomous driving has passed through, so it's already in the past. There are new things that are coming up. So coming back to your question, which is related to big data, I just want to give you that history of to understand that there's every few years there's something new. Data warehouses are still there. Some of these big organizations have a bunch of data still through going through those traditional reporting, because your executives still want to know the year to year, the kind of traditional reporting that is needed, right? How they're changing it, of course, in cloud, as you already have pointed it out, it has changed to more of a data lake where you have this raw layer where everybody can come and get whatever they want to do with that raw data layer. They could be data engineers, scientists, anyone can actually just grab anything, right? And then you have process and pre-process and process layers where your engineers come in, like data engineers or data scientists come in and process that information in a more useful way and clean it in a way that anybody can actually make sense of it more, right? So the future is definitely in that space coming to be more data lake oriented, where people have this. Azure, we have this called modern data warehouse concepts, where eventually there are data warehouses like SQL data warehouse, Redshifts of the world, or Snowflakes of the world there, but the data journey towards that has changed. So I would highly recommend you to look at that, the modern data warehouse concepts. Just search on Azure one, or just search on in AWS also, or Google has something very similar. Look at that. The other thing that has changed, again, giving a very long answer here because this is a field that I'm very passionate about, is related to the IoT stuff, right? So the real time or near real time processing of the data. So previously there used to be these single source of data where you had to wait for 24 hours to get the new data refresh at 6 a.m. every morning and get your new report. Now that has completely changed. The industries have completely revolutionized the way they are taking data. So now Alexa, you talk to Alexa, say, Alexa, tell me what's the time. You don't have like 6 hours to wait for it to actually respond back, right? You want it to be like spontaneous and tell you right away, with their data pipelines and all of the NLP and everything in place, telling you an accurate results in a few seconds. And I look at my kids, they don't have the patience, like even for a few seconds, if the answer is wrong, they get impatient, right? So that whole near real-time data processing is nearly the future. The IoT, the intelligent devices, the edge devices, those are where I think a lot of future is going towards. And I think that's the next wave of the current data state that we are living in. Very long answer to that, but I hope you get some idea about it.
We have a more transition into some questions about leadership. And specifically, how did you transition into a leadership role? How did you know you were ready? Did you proactively seek a leadership role? And I'm going to throw in an additional piece to this. Did you ever evaluate the, being an individual contributor versus moving into that leadership role?
Yeah, that's really a really hard question to also answer. And I'll just share again my journey towards that. In last year GHC, there was this session or workshop attended by Jo Miller. She has a book called Women of Influence. If you've not read that, please do that. She's a great speaker, and there was this one slide in her presentation in GHC 19. I wish I had it somewhere that I can bring it up right now, but it says that leadership is not a position, it's not a title, it's an action. It's something that you do in your day-to-day. It's the mindset. So by reading that in that workshop, I realized that I'm a leader already, right? Because when you are taking action in your work every single day, taking actions, be it going to the whiteboard and solving some problems, or helping another person in your team, or just like helping a cross team to solve a problem that you have at work, you're already showing those skills. So right there is leadership. And so I think it's really important for us to understand that this is not a title. I shouldn't wait for somebody to tell me that I am a senior engineer to become a senior engineer. So that's the one mind shift or mindset change that happened for me. That I thought that I was already doing the things, but I always thought that I need that title to be that leader, right? So that's the one thing we all need to understand. That's one thing. Secondly, the question that you agree about, like IC versus a manager role. So that was a debate in my head for a long time as well, because I wanted to stay true to my my technical roles or my technical abilities as long as I could. Right? Because this is again a common myth or thing that we do think that once we become managers, we don't code anymore, right? And this was really hard thing for me to realize that that's not true, first of all, and not every organization is set up like that. In my current role, I still code. Of course, the percentage of that is less. But I do take the same in the similar way how we have daily standards, I take the same Jira items and work on them, like in our Azure DevOps, right? So I do take them, but of course there are other things that add to it. So we have this thing in Microsoft, which is a model of leadership, which is to coach, model, and care. Those are the three main attributes that you need in any leader, and it doesn't need to be a manager. Like any leader, even IC roles, you need them to show that they can coach others, they can model that they are the right leader, they can do it by action, showing that they are doing it, and care for the rest of the team. So those are the attributes. If you think you're already doing, then you're a leader, first thing. Second thing is understanding of how much you want to code in a day, or how much you want to stay true to your technical depth versus you are ready to do these other things where you are spending time in building the team, where you're spending time blocking and blocking your team. Sometimes it's conflict resolution, sometimes it's just hiring and coaching and like building the team. So there are a lot of these other things that as a manager you have to do that as an IC you might not have to worry about, right? So if you think you have those attributes, you have those soft skills, then manager is the right role for you also, and you can really think about it. But in some of these orgs, you don't need to be a manager to grow up higher in your ladder. So understand that also, right? In Microsoft, for example, you could be a distinguished engineer, which is at the same level as the highest kind of management layer that we have. So it doesn't need to be like one-on-one. So understand that. I think that would kind of answer most of the leadership questions here. For me, I was not planning to switch to a manager role, at least this year, with everything else happening. But my current manager started, I was a team lead for a while. So I was a technical lead in my current team for a while. And he actually switched to another role. So that role opened up, and then the Skip and him and everybody else said that you are the right person to take this role. So I said, okay, let's do it. But outside of work, I was already doing all of this, right? And within work also, I think I was doing this work as a community person also. I lead a nonprofit called Pakistani Women in Computing, where I'm leading a team of like almost 50 plus volunteers around the globe. So I was already doing these things, building the team, coaching, doing their mentorship, making sure that they are on the right track in their careers. So that made the most sense for me.
That's awesome. Lots of great insight there. Did you ever? I like that. You recognize the other opportunities, because you were saying, are there a couple of additional things when you're a manager that you're thinking about developing your team, and how you use other opportunities in your volunteer roles to get that experience and figure out, do I enjoy this? Is this something that I would want to do full time? It's awesome. One more question about your leadership. What's your leadership style? Do you have that defined? Or is it kind of what you were discussing about, the Microsoft leadership model?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a combination of a few things. I do believe that this is again it would be good to ask my reports, like, to what do they think, or the team that I work with. But I think I'm an empathetic leader. So I start by putting myself in everybody's shoes around me, and I think so my leadership style is really starting with empathy. And again, I don't know if it's a official definition, like official style in the leadership definition or not, but we do practice that a lot in Microsoft. And this is something I really do an extra step and try to think more about, like, what would I do if I were in their shoes, or what is like really the situation that they are in. The other thing that we do a lot here in Microsoft, and again, this is something outside of Microsoft, which I've seen a lot of companies shifting towards, is active listening, right? And when you are in a meeting and somebody asks a question, or somebody says something, don't just jump in with like to answer that just for the sake of answering or just for the sake of it. So really, when you ask somebody how they're doing, what's going on, really listen. And listen not to just to response back, but really be there to answer. Again, I kind of drag that to a different side, but I think my leadership style is very empathetic. I'm very in the situation where I want my team to trust me. I want that relationship to be built over time. And I say this in my one-on-ones a lot, that I'm your manager today. I might not be in like 6 months or 1 year or 3 months, you don't know. But I want you to remember that you can reach out to me wherever you go, and I'll still be there to help you, right? So I want to invest time in building the career of the folks that report to me or in my bigger team. So that would be kind of how I approach it. I also look at this in a way that if I had a manager, and what would be the top 3 things that I would ask, or would be the things that I would need from them to support me in my career. So that thought is always in my head. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think we have time for just a couple more questions. Sophia asks, would companies hire you based on your certification in machine learning, even though your work experience may be IT business analyst related along with an engineering degree?
So I think it's a good question. I've seen both ways actually. So I've seen companies hire not just Microsoft but outside also through some of my mentees, and like recently going through the hiring processes in different places. It's a combination of a few things. Most of the time it's based on how you did in the interview, right? If you really did really well in the interview, of course you went through the initial process and all of that, there's a higher chance you'll get hired, no matter if you had a certification or you were what your previous experience was, right? But how you land a job or you actually start that conversation, that's where this can differ, right? So if you're applying for an ML engineer role per se in a particular company, my best guess would be to understand what a typical engineer in that role really does in their day-to-day, understand what they do. And if your certification or any of the experience that you bring in your resume matches that, then you are the right fit for that role and definitely apply. The other thing a lot of women do, and this is a common study, that we don't apply for things unless we think we checkbox every 10 experiences that are needed, right? So don't do that. If you think you are even 60% okay with most of the requirements, apply. Even don't kind of disqualify yourself even before applying. That's the first thing. The more, if I'm hiring, let's say I'll give you my example. If I'm hiring for my team, I always look for a full 360-degree view of that person. I never look for a particular certification or a particular experience that they have in a specific role that I'm hiring, because I'm thinking about what this person can grow into next 3 years in my team or in my bigger org, right? And when I'm interviewing, this is something, again, some folks again might not agree with me. I start with a very vague question. Sometimes a lot of people might not like it as well. I give a very vague business problem and ask you to tell me. And I ask this question at all levels, like it doesn't matter if you're senior or starting. If I give you a business problem, how do you solve that problem? How do you understand what I'm really asking? And then really go into the tech and solve that problem. It's true for business data problems as well. So thinking about that, it's important. So yeah, certifications are important in cases when there are specific, when the hiring manager is literally looking for that. If you even have some kind of projects to showcase, that is also good for you to apply for those roles. So simple answer is don't disqualify yourself, apply. But the companies are looking at different things in the combination, and usually it's the experience or hands-on work that takes precedence on any of the other things. So if you have done a project, you have a GitHub that shows that, that will be taken precedence on anything else that you showcase.
That's great. I like the call out of looking for a well-rounded candidate, right? Like your business analyst or engineering degree may give you a different perspective that enables you to answer that business question really well. And you have, the technical chops that go with it. That's great. Our last question for today, if there's one thing we should take away today, aside from, I believe you said kindness is always be kind, what would it be?
One thing I think, so invest time in building those relationships, right? I think invest time in giving back also. So that is the one thing I would say. As you're today a part of this session, try to reach out to the other folks that you see in the call. Try to reach out to Bree, try to reach out to me afterwards as well, if you think that I can add any value in your career, right? I think we all do it one way or the other, but really not in a meaningful way, right? So invest in the relationships at work, invest in the relationship in your community, and invest some time over there. You will be surprised, like how they turn around. Any of the job switches that I've done have been through somebody reaching out, through either somebody that they knew me or they saw something that I did. So that has been a key turning point for me. I don't know if it's for anyone else or not, but this would be my advice, to really spend some time. And you don't need, like, focus on the quality, not the quantity. So it's not about having 5,000 followers or 6,000 followers, or I don't know, 25,000 followers. It's not about that. Or having those networks. If you have 5 folks that you can turn to when you need a particular technical advice, you need a personal advice, you need something to, like, bounce ideas off. If you have like 3, 4, 5 folks also to do that, then you've already built that network. So focus on the quantity, not the quality. That would be my key takeaway.
I love that. And that is the ultimate plug for me to share about, this network that we are building here, Women Who Code Cloud. We'd love to be a place where you can connect and meet with people and build these meaningful relationships. I can second that your network is one of the most powerful things that will help your career. I, like you, Muazma, every new role that I get is because of someone being like, "Hey, Bree, are you interested in this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's go." So follow us on social, get plugged in the events that we have happening. Please, please, please join our Slack channel. I will drop the link here in the chat. Start conversations, reach out to folks. I'm on Slack, Muazma's on Slack. We'd be happy to, engage. I like answering random philosophical technology questions. So yeah, build your network. We would love to be a place and an organization that can help you build meaningful, inspirational, helpful relationships for you to grow in your careers. And with that, thank you, Muazma, for an incredible hour. Like, I literally still have 1,001 questions for you. It was just a great time, a great hour of inspiration, a great hour of insight and knowledge. You did not disappoint, as I guaranteed you wouldn't.
Thank you so much for setting this up. I hope you learned something new, or at least have something to take away. And happy to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Slack, or whatever. Happy to answer any questions that I couldn't in this 1 hour as well. Thank you.
I'm going to drop the link in the chat real quick, and then we will end today's session. Everyone have a fabulous weekend. Oh, if I can find my link. I only have it handy, but my monitor broke on me, so I don't have all my windows open. The Slack link is in the channel. I will leave it open for 1 more minute in case you need to copy it. You can also email cloud@womenwhocode.com, and we will ensure that we get you added to Slack. But with that, thank you, everyone. Have a fabulous weekend, and we will talk to you later.
Thank you.